This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
It's really cool.
Nationale, Champions Cup, Challenge Cup, French national team, towns, cities, bars, fans, music, everything else that makes French rugby so fantastic. It is Rob. I'm here for a bonus episode. I am on my own because if you listen to Monday's podcast all about the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, then, or probably not Monday's podcast, it was Wednesday's, but if you listen to that one, you will know that Richard is on holiday in Montenegro. And we didn't quite get a chance to touch on any Pro Day 2 stuff. So this episode is going to be all about round 25 of Pro Day 2, so last weekend, and a little bit of a preview of round 26, starting on Thursday, the 10th of April, which is 5 rounds to go. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. It's all coming down to the crunch in Pro Day 2. So let's start with last week. I mean, so I think we previewed last weekend or last week's fixtures by saying it was kind of not a vintage round. Perhaps there was a lot of probable home wins. There was a lot of strong teams up against some of the weaker sides, and the strong sides being at home largely. And as a result, we saw 7 home wins and only 1 away win. And that 1 away win was for Agen away at Oyonnax. Only away win of the round. More late drama from Agen for the second week in a row. They got a 79th minute and 85th minute try the previous week. 79th minute try away at Oyonnax, which has been Caps a great return to the league. So they had a pretty tough set of 3 fixtures, and 2 games in, they've won 2 games, having lost to Nice away just before the break. So they are suddenly up to 9th. So I tipped them to go down, and they are now 9th and 6 points clear of 15th place. They're a weird side because they just seem to click at certain times, and they can be absolutely rubbish, as we perhaps saw losing that game away at Nice. They perhaps don't have the names on paper that they did last season, but they seem to have built something. Iban Echeverri on the wing is going really well. Billy Searle at 10 is going really well. So yeah, a couple of really good. But I think Billy Searle's been really key for them this season, and I think without him they'd be really struggling. The other interesting game that we saw last week was Béziers against Aurillac. So Béziers we kind of flagged as perhaps being on the slide because of the injuries and also having a pretty tough set of fixtures. So this was certainly one of their easier fixtures. They do actually have Mont-de-Marsan in a couple of weeks. Mont-de-Marsan at home in a couple of weeks' time. But last week we backed the Lac. We went for back the Lac and went for Aurillac away from home, despite the fact they have the worst away record in the league, which they still do. Despite picking up a bonus point win, they got a 93rd minute penalty. 93rd to get a bonus point. And that could make all the difference come the end of the season because it is so tight down the bottom. And that keeps them level on points on 47 points with Mont-de-Marsan. So they are still in that 15th place spot, but they're level on points with Mont-de-Marsan, and they are within 4 points of a couple of other teams. The commitment to get to the 93rd minute away from home at Béziers, that is a brilliant effort. We spoke last week about the fact that they've actually got more wins than quite a few teams above them, but it's their lack of bonus points that's hurting them. So for them to get a losing bonus point, at least, I know it's not an attacking bonus point, but for them to get that is pretty key. Béziers, yeah, they had a strong side out, but they can continue to struggle a little bit in the league, given where they are in the league. So going into last week, I think they were in 5th or possibly even 4th still. No, sorry, they were 5th. They should be targeting an attacking bonus point at home to the 15th place side, worst away record in the league. So yeah, they're just not going that well. The guy filling in at 9 for Samuel Marquez has played a lot of game. He's got a lot of game time this season. Marquez hasn't always been there. He's had a few injuries. Obviously, they rest him away from home quite a bit. So it's not but it's just such a drop off from Samuel Marquez that his loss and those guys in the back row, Pauter and Salih, is such a big drop off that it's going to hurt them. I think positives for Bezier, there was another try for Gaban Law. That's 16 tries now, top of the charts. He was it's an absolutely brilliant try. It shows ridiculous gas. It shows skill. It is just... I can't wait to see more of him in the top 14 and see the intricacies of the play, because we see the highlights and it is a hell of a highlights reel he is building up. So yeah, looking forward to seeing him in the top 14 more. Can he, if they get into a home barrage and they get into the top 14 through Bezier, or if they kind of get through to the knockouts properly, it will largely be down to him at this stage of the season. So Bezier are still in 6th with that win. And the rest of the teams in the top 6, or the current what is now the top 6, also got wins, as we kind of predicted. And actually all of Brive, Colomiers, Grenoble, Saxeville and Provence all got bonus point wins, which makes that Bezier lack of bonus point win even more kind of acute, that kind of difference, and that does drop them down to 6th. 2 more tries for Lucas da Silva at Brive, 14 for the season from hooker. He's 27. I kind of thought he was perhaps a little bit younger, but he is Portuguese, so he's probably got not that much exposure at kind of the top level, which is probably why we probably think he's a little bit younger. There were 2 more tries for Wilfried Hlu, so he is now 15 for the season. So all the top scorers in the try-scoring charts got tries last week. He is 2nd in the league behind Gaban Law, and has been the beneficiary of a brilliant Grenoble team the last couple of seasons. He's a really good finisher. Yeah, just has good, just a classic winger, really. I think there's nothing, he's not huge or anything like that. He's just a skillful, old school finisher. Talking of try scorers, someone that is now in the top 10 try scorers in the league is Alex Masibaka, who got a hat-trick for Soyong Alem, which is absolutely ridiculous. We've called him out, we talk about him every week, I think, but we've called him out in the past of being a try-scoring number 8. He now has 10 for the season, which is pretty impressive. I think in about 20 games. He's not played all of them. For Saxeville, they were at home to Nice. They would expect to win. They've not always been brilliant at home in terms of getting the kind of margin of victory, but Saxeville at home to Nice did get a pretty comfortable win, 45-14, which is, it's one of their bigger margins of victory at home. And Ewan Barrett, on only his 2nd game back after a long injury, he got a brace, one of which is absolute gas for a guy that's had a big injury to show that amount of gas. And just Saxeville seem to be developing players that can score from beyond halfway, and they've got another one with Ewan Barrett back fit, so that's great for them. Elsewhere, Colomiers picked up a 51 points to 34 win at home to Nevers, so that's over 50 points 2 weeks in a row at home for Colomiers, which is pretty good. But the most eye-catching result, perhaps, of the week was the final one of the round, and Provence beating Dax 57-0 at the Stade Maurice David, which is a 113-point swing from their previous week. So, having lost 63-7 to Valence Romans away the week before, to win 57-0 is quite ridiculous as swings go. There were 4 tries, I'm going to struggle on this name, there were 4 tries for Nadir Bourdieu, who hasn't lit up this season much in terms of Provence and the quality you'd expect from their wingers. It's been Adrien Lepeg and Drouet who have been tearing it up, and they're kind of in the try scoring charts, whereas Nadir Bourdieu was only 1 try in 13 appearances, 10 starts before this game. So that's great for him, but it's kind of a bit of a shock. We spoke about in the other games how all the top try scorers keep scoring tries, and it was kind of slightly less heralded winger. He's still a winger, but slightly less heralded player, or someone that we haven't seen that much of. So well done him. Dax are an incredibly weird team to work out. I just cannot work out where they're at. Their last couple of results, they comfortably beat Bezier the week before, albeit with some late tries, because very tight up until the kind of last 5-10 minutes. They very narrowly lost to Biarritz before the break, but ultimately they are one win in their last 9 games, one win and a draw in their last 9 games, which speaks of a pretty rapid decline, and they are only 6 points above the 15th place access match spot. And the nature of some of those defeats is not good. I mean, there's quite a few teams who have been nilled away from home now in the second half of the season. There weren't many before. There were only 3 before Christmas, and it feels like there's been quite a few recently, and slightly bigger margins of victory. I think as the kind of the length of the season starts to take its toll, you have the golfing, not necessarily the golfing class, but teams kind of not being those few percent off, or not sending a strong side, or not sending their best side. That is starting to tell when you get a team up for it, in need of a win at home. That's when you get these big scores. I still don't think there's huge kind of golfs in class. If you look at Valence Romans away at Brive last weekend, 26-9, that's not huge gap. We've seen some pretty close results. Agen beating Grenoble. There's still big teams are turning over the small teams. Still small teams turning over the big teams. So it's not necessarily a golfing class. I think the kind of league is still incredibly tight across the board, albeit we do see a kind of top half and a bottom half. The big losers of last week's fixtures of round 25 were Montauban, not in terms of scoreline, but in terms of where they are at in the league. So they were the only team in the top 7 to lose. So they are now 4 points off Béziers, who are 6th, who themselves are a couple off 5th now. So Montauban, having been kind of 4th or 5th coming into this block of fixtures, they are now 6 points off that 4th place and a win away from getting back into that barrage spot. They've also lost 3 on the bounce. And yes, they are quite tough fixtures, but this is not the time of the season that you want to be losing 3 on the bounce. They are a kind of streaky side. They were on a great run of form before that, and then before that run of form, I think they lost 5 in a row. So they are a team that's a bit kind of up and down. Losing by 3 points away at Biarritz is nothing to be ashamed of. Biarritz have been good at home this season, despite that kind of mid-season blip in terms of when they lost the plot generally, but outside of that, they've been pretty strong. So 3-point defeat, bonus point defeat away at Biarritz isn't too bad, but quite often with Pro D, the timing in terms of who's just had an away game and who's just had home games and stuff like that can exacerbate kind of the discrepancies in the league in terms of the points. But yeah, Montauban they've still got it all in their own control because of the fixtures and the games they've got at home. Just doesn't look good last week because of all the other teams getting wins and 5 of them getting bonus wins. So let's go on to next week's fixtures. Round 26, Montauban, to be fair to them, do have quite a good game at home. They have Dax, who have been not only woeful, but they've been dreadful away from home recently. So that's a pretty good one for them. But that was just a link, really, because the big games this weekend are all at the bottom. There are some absolutely huge games at the bottom of the league this week in round 26. Valence Romans, they now have a 4-point cushion over that 15th place, that access spot. They host top of the table Grenoble, second best away side in the league. It's a derby game. Valence is about an hour or 2, I think, from Grenoble. It's pretty close. That's a huge game. Valence, who have had a horrific run of fixtures on paper, they beat comfortably. I mean, they hammered Provence at home a couple of weeks ago, and they 26-9. Brive did get a bonus point, but 26-9 away at Brive, given the kind of golfing class on paper, is pretty good. So they cap off a kind of run of, I guess, the 3 strongest sides in the league, the 3 teams that we think are probably the slightly above the next 3 or 4. Can they get a home win against Grenoble? It's not really, Grenoble lost away at Agen a couple of weeks ago. They've not quite been the juggernaut away from home that they are at home. Be a fascinating game that. The next interesting game is Aurillac hosting Colomiers. So the Aurillac are still the side in 15th place on 47 points. Colomiers at home for anyone has always felt like a kind of winnable game, because even though Colomiers have not been dreadful away from home, they've always been kind of, they're not a side that kind of screams quality or star power or big names or big play, like physical players. They've been probably slightly better than some of their parts this season, and those teams never kind of feel like quite as much of a threat away from home, I don't think. But that said, Colomiers are in brilliant form. As I said, like they've had a couple of games where they've stuck 50 points on people, and they only marginally lost away to Aix-en-Provence in their previous away game. I mean, that's huge for Aurillac because, yes, it's one of their tougher fixtures, but they've always prided themselves on getting those home wins, and that is such a huge thing at this point of the season to get those home wins. So that's a tough one to call. I think I might end up going Colomiers. I just think their form is so good, and Aurillac at home haven't been the Aurillac at home of previous years. I think Rich is going to back the Lac. I'm still a little bit undecided on it. But if they do win, they should lift. Well, they almost certainly will lift themselves out of that 15th place. No, they will lift themselves out of that 15th place unless something remarkable happens, because Mont-de-Marsan host Oyonnax, and Oyonnax are now 13th with 51 points. Mont-de-Marsan are 14th with 47. So they are 4 points. Oyonnax are 4 points above Mont-de-Marsan and Aurillac, and level with Valence Romans. So come the end of this round, we could see one of Valence Romans or Oyonnax in that access match spot. It suddenly, this Mont-de-Marsan against Oyonnax game suddenly seems like a huge game because of the form of these two sides. Both sides only have one win in their last 6, which is pretty poor. I mean, Mont-de-Marsan, we've been saying they're unpredictable. They've kind of rediscovered the really bad form from the start of the season. They are capable of some incredible things, especially at home. Oyonnax have still been pretty rubbish away from home. They do only have 2 away wins, and the rest has been pretty crap. I think Rich and I are both going to go for Mont-de-Marsan in that one. And if results go the way we generally think they might, then we will see Oyonnax, the relegated side from top 14, in the access match spot for Pro D2, with some interesting fixtures to come, including Grenoble away on the derby weekend, which, you know, that's nil point basically compared to Mont-de-Marsan, who are Dax at home. So, and Argennes, Valence Romans have Nevers. So the other kind of contenders around them have winnable games on that derby weekend, which could set the tone. It's almost like I don't know if bookies are taking bets on this, but Nice are they're all but relegated now, and they will more than likely, almost certainly, be officially relegated this weekend. There is an unlikely scenario of them getting 5 consecutive bonus point wins, and either Aurillac or Mont-de-Marsan not picking up a single point. But I think actually it would then come down to amount of wins, and I think they would still be behind the other two. So they may already be down. Haven't seen any news of that. A fascinating round. It's going to be huge. We'll do our predictions properly. Look out for us for that on social media. That'll go up on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, and we'll put a little thing up on YouTube as well. If you're watching on YouTube, there will be hopefully a short linked to this. And we are at Rosbeast Rugby on all of those. Get in touch with who you think is going to be relegated, who you think is going to end up in that top 6. We want to know who you guys are thinking. We want to know your thoughts. You know, we're kind of watching as much of this or catching as much of this as you guys are. So,
hey, Kristen, how's it tracking?
With Carvana Value Tracker.
What else?
Oh, it's tracking. In fact, Value Surge Alert trucks up 2.5%. Vans down 1.7%.
Just as predicted.
Mm-hmm.
So, we gonna...
I don't know. Could sell, could hold.
The power to always know our car's worth.
Exhilarating, isn't it?
Tracking.
Always know your car's worth with Carvana Value Tracker.
Yeah, get in touch. And just to round us off, because Rich may not be here, but I'm not going to neglect his favourite league of them all, Nationale, because we actually had a game last weekend as a result of the rearranged fixture between Périgueux and Massy at Périgueux, which was from round number quite a while ago. It was from round 19, so the rest of those fixtures were played on 14th and 15th of February. And last weekend, Périgueux hosted Massy. Massy, who had been on a brilliant run of form, have now lost 2 in a row. But before that, they were kind of 8 or 9 wins in a row. And Périgueux won 37-23, which puts them third with 5 wins in a row. They are 5 points behind Narbonne, so that's still quite a big leap for them to get into that home semi-final, but it's likely that they're in a good chance of getting a home barrage game. Chambéry have all but secured that semi-final spot. They are 91 points. They're 9 clear of Périgueux and Rouen, and they are 10 clear of Carcassonne, so it's unlikely that they will have a game, certainly not at home anyway. Down at the bottom, it's all to play for. So Stade Langonnaise, Langon are the team currently in 13th in the access match spot. They're on 48. Suresnes on 49. Marc-en-Barœul on 51. And the key thing there is in round 25, the penultimate round this weekend, Marc-en-Barœul have their game against Hyères-Carcassonne. So they have that bye round and that 5 points. So they will lift 53 points. Elsewhere, Langon host top of the table and future force of European rugby, Chambéry, at home, so that's a tough game for them. Suresnes host Bourg-en-Bresse, who haven't been brilliant this season, so they could get a win. So Langon not looking great because they go away to Narbonne in the final round in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, some pretty huge games. The big one at the top of the table, or big ones at the top of the table, Albi host Périgueux. Albi in 6th, 5 points behind Périgueux, host Périgueux, and Rouen host Massy. So it's going to be all changed. There's all as we say every week, there's all to play for. Where are Narbonne this week? Narbonne at home to Carcassonne in a bit of a derby. Is that the El Classic Ord? Was that the one that they called El Classic Ord? Yeah, it was. Yeah, fascinating. All to play for. I think Chambéry looking good. Interesting to see who gets those home semis. It's pretty much between Périgueux, Rouen, Carcassonne. Actually, no, Albi, if they win this weekend, they could be important. And Périgueux don't have any. They play Rouen on the last weekend, just in case it needed a little bit of drama. Keep your eye on Nationale. Some of those, so Narbonne are pretty good at streaming their home games. So that Narbonne v Carcassonne, 6 p.m. local on GBP time, UK time, on Saturday. If you're not watching the Champions Cup or you want to go something slightly different, they tend to stream their games. But yeah, keeping Rich satisfied with a little bit of Nationale there, and hopefully keeping your needs satisfied on all things French rugby, because we are committed to our bread and butter of the lower league stuff. That is the end of our domestic roundup. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, get in the comments, let us know your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send us a message at rosbeestrugby@gmail.com, and we are at rosbeestrugby on all social media outlets. But we are going to do, or I am going to do, a little couple of Petit-Fours and Digestifs, as regular listeners will know. Petit-Fours. Been a bit of news. It's generally all transfer stuff, no kind of niche stuff. The only kind of slight, kind of more Petit-Four foodie out of rugby stuff that we saw is the Po boys went and did a day of work experience in the Halles de Po in Les Halles at the kind of various different market stalls, kind of doing some food prep, doing some butchery, I think. That looked like quite fun. They seem to be doing some quite fun kind of away day stuff. Hopefully that's building a bit of team morale, which they seem to be building and they will need for the run-in. But the rest of it generally is kind of contract stuff and transfers. Joel Merkler, who seems to be hitting a real run of form and obviously a key player for our fake April Fool's account, Costa del Rugby, our main man, the future of Spanish rugby, Joel Merkler. He's extended his contract with Toulouse until 2028. He's been with the academy for years. And Toulouse, as part of that contract extension, put out a video of him coming through the academy. And I think there's already parallels with Dan Cole anyway. And Dan Cole was better at the same age. I'm backing Coley there. I think Joel Merkler may have been bald since the age of like 14 or 15. I think looking at some of that video footage, seems to have been bald from birth. But yeah, and hasn't seemed to have changed appearance in any way at all. Elsewhere, there was news obviously with the Lions stuff that Andy Farrell's willing to accept French-based players. If you listen to our Champions Cup podcast earlier in the week, you'll know that there's been, we talked about how David Ribbons could be in with a shout, but Another second row, Courtney Laws has been backing himself to make a Lions starting spot. There's a lot of conjecture about whether someone playing Pro de Deux can make a step up to Lions tourist. I mean, Courtney Laws backed himself to make a test spot. I think his argument is if he gets on the tour, then he can do enough in the games and show his skills kind of to force his case. It's an interesting one. There's a lot of, we don't really know whether how Pro de Deux compares to the URC. Some of the Challenge Cup results this weekend would suggest that the URC is kind of, or the bottom end of the URC is very parallel with the bottom end of the top 14. There's not been a huge disparity in many of the games there, albeit Sam Davis thought that Pro de Deux was kind of pretty comparable to the Welsh side in the URC. So interesting to see. I think Breve, at least he will kind of be battle hardened and, kind of match ready in terms of championship knockout games and stuff like that. Interesting one. My hunt, he would go. Obviously the experience would help on tour, but yeah, can't see him going. Elsewhere, Harry Williams from Poe has signed for Harlequins. He's returning to the UK. He's found a bit of form recently. It's a pretty good signing for Harlequins, bit of depth at tight head. Talking of tight head props, Nicolas Mas, French legend, Perpignan legend, is returning to Perpignan. He is replacing Perry Freshwater as scrum coach next year. The Perpignan scrum has gone really well of late, so interesting one there that Perry Freshwater is leaving. Well, we knew he was leaving. Interesting that they've picked up in form since knowing that. You never know quite what to read into that, but quite cool to have a legend of the club back in the coaching staff. And the other big news of the week was Patrick Tuifa, who played for France under-20s in the under-20s World Championships last year and in the Six Nations last year, who is playing his rugby in New Zealand, currently the Hurricanes. He is from New Caledonia and therefore eligible for France. He has been signed by Toulon, which is confirmed signing. They've got a few New Caledonian players in the past, but a huge signing. If you're... I don't think he kind of blew me out the water when I saw him, but if you're being fought over by New Zealand Rugby Union and the FFR and Toulon and the Hurricanes, you're a pretty good player. So definitely one to keep an eye out on. Looking forward to seeing him in the top 14. Looking forward to seeing more of him. I'd love to see Joe Quere-Kareba, who is at Toulon. I'd love to see him play more, his former under-20s teammate. But that'll do me for now. We will be back. Rich will be back from his holiday, and we will be discussing the best rugby weekend of the calendar, the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup quarterfinals. 4 brilliant games in each, quite a few, and that huge game between Toulon and Toulouse that has the possibility of being the best France v France game of the season so far. So we'll be back next week with a more usual podcast of both of us, but until then, follow us we are at Rosbeast Rugby on TikTok, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and tell your mates. Give us a review. If you haven't given us a review and you're a regular listener, give us a review, tell your mates, share it, get it out there. We want to grow. We want to bring the news of French rugby to as many people as we can. But until next week, au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.